Hi there to whoever's watching. My name is Samantha. I live in Texas and I just wanted to make a video about the first time that I had ever worked as a personal assistant in my life. It's a really interesting story and I just wanted to talk about my past experiences when I've ever worked at different places before. So initially I was an X-ray technician, and that was a couple of years ago when I was in the medical field. I'm not in that field anymore. But after that, when I wanted to transition out of the medical field, I started working in the service industry. So I was a waitress for just a little while, and it was fun. It was very active and I had a lot of fun. But after I left there, I decided that I wanted to be a personal assistant. I don't know where I got the idea. I just thought of it, and then I looked on Craigslist and I tried to find a job opportunity just to try something new and get out of my comfort zone. I was like, let me just try it to see if I like it. And I did. And I got hired by somebody. I'm not gonna say obviously who, but I just want to talk about my experience being a personal assistant. So I don't know how it works with other people who are personal assistants. In Texas, I'm sure it's different than from when you're a personal assistant in LA or in New York or Chicago or wherever, right? Miami, whatever. But I knew that there was going to be a huge spectrum of different types of personal assistants. So, right, there's those personal assistants that are have been personal assistants for more than 10 years and they become really close friends with their employer, and they're more like a family friend than a personal assistant. I know that there are personal assistants who are essentially just interns. They kind of just there's not a very personal basis. They're more business oriented and they just do that kind of stuff. There's that. And then there was this weird miscellaneous subcategory of personal assistant that I happened to wedge myself into. So I was a personal assistant for a owner of a massage company. They hired me at a hotel. So the interview was conducted at a hotel. I went to the hotel. I tried to dress somewhat, I don't want to say unprofessional, but I wanted to appear approachable and I wanted to appear relatable and I wanted to appear appealing. So I did my hair, I did my makeup, I wore this nice dress with some heels, and I went to this hotel and I met him in the lobby. We went to the hotel's restaurant bar area. We sat down, we had some waters. He had a clipboard with him. So my first impression was that, he was very by the book, ready to question me about a bunch of things. I figured on his clipboard, he had, maybe a bunch of topics that he wanted to go over with me, or ask me, if I would be willing to do X, Y, and Z or whatever. But really he didn't refer to this clipboard that he had with him. He just didn't really use it at all. He kind of just talked to me as if he was just getting to know me like a friend. And then he told me that he had a daughter, and I said, that's great. And I asked what her age was, and he said that she was just a baby, and if I would be comfortable with, being kind of a sort of personal assistant / nanny. And I was like, yeah, I mean, that sounds great. That's perfect for me. I love kids. We talked about pay. We met on a dollar amount. He got up, very quickly and was like, okay, great. Let's, I'll call you on Monday and we'll start then. And I was like, cool. So I got the job right there on the spot, which was, good. Oh, that's always good. And I was really excited. And I didn't really know what to expect. We talked somewhat about his business. He told me some of the things that he would be expecting of me to do: organizing files, making copies of things, being kind of a business runner. So I would take a bunch of stuff that I needed to different locations of his business, basically drive around and drop things off or pick things up. Since the massage company has, a huge load of sheets that they have to wash, I would go and take those to get washed. I would, also do a bunch of stuff personally for him. So if he wanted breakfast or coffee, I would get him that. If he wanted his house clean, I would clean his house. If he wanted, you know, company to go have lunch or whatever, we would go do that. You know, go shopping for his daughter, I would help him go shop for his daughter. Take care of his daughter while he was like either napping or doing work, I would do that. I would never feed her. I never like changed her or gave her a bath or nothing like that. I just watched her watch TV, and I played, you know, games with her and toys, and sometimes I would read. He would buy furniture for his daughter. He would have me set it all up, stuff like that. So cleaning, kind of like miscellaneous. Honestly, you know, to be totally honest, it's like being your wife slash girlfriend without the like relationship part. It's like I do all the like womanly things that he would want, but nothing like, you know, the romantic aspect. So it was nothing about romantic aspect. I believe at the time, I do believe that he was attracted to me. I believe that that's why he hired me. I don't know how much he liked my personality. We didn't really connect that well, but you know, I would try to connect with him. I knew that it was just like, this is my job and we are, you know, this is a business relationship. But every now and then, you know, I would try to connect with him, and it just seemed like we just didn't really vibe. Like we just kind of just were very different. I'm very conservative and modest, and he was very like party boy kind of, and kind of like crazy and wild, and I was just like not about it. It just, you know, gave me anxiety. So yeah, and he also had a dog, so I was required to like look after his dog or like feed his dog, take his dog to get groomed, stuff like that. Basically anything and everything you need that's appropriate, you know. So we had an okay relationship. We were very friendly toward each other. We joked about a bunch of stuff, but it never went past that. When I worked for him for a longer time, we started getting more, we started bonding a little more, being, you know, more easygoing with each other. Kind of like at the very beginning, our relationship was very rigid. And then as we got to know each other, then we, you know, kind of like became actual friends, and we would like talk about stuff not related to work, and we would like hang out and stuff like that. So everything was always like great and hunky-dory. Everything was always cool. But then I started noticing that he was starting to like vent to me. So he would start to open up to me in ways that I personally didn't feel were appropriate, but at the time I felt kind of like he needed somebody to lean on. He kind of needed somebody to emotionally let off steam, and stuff like that, because from the very beginning of ever knowing him, I knew that he was a very stressed out person. I could tell that he was very stressed out with a lot of stuff that was going on in his personal life. I could tell that he was very bothered by the stress that he had to endure. I could tell that he was very like tense a lot of the time. So half of my job, I felt like my job, I was a little bit taxed because emotionally, because I feel like I took on a lot of his emotions, because I felt bad for him that he had to go through stressful things and also run a business, you know, basically be the CEO of his business. And I felt bad for him, you know, of having that stress, but then having, you know, personal life stress as well. And then also what appeared to me to be stress from his childhood brought up into, you know, adulthood. I'm a firm believer in, you know, just a side note, I'm a firm believer in the fact that everybody in this world, everybody in this life, like if they don't process traumas or traumatic instances from their childhood, they get carried onto adulthood, and if they're unresolved, they affect your life, they affect your your romantic relationships, your relationships with your family, obviously, your relationships at your job, with your coworkers, with your customers, your clients, or, you know, what have you, strangers, even strangers. We're all about, you know, our phones and Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter and all this stuff, and the news. And I feel like all of that is all distractions for us to, you know, when we feel this like ugly, uncomfortable feeling inside ourselves, we look to a distraction to not feel that feeling. Everything that makes money in this country is all of our distractions, and they're not necessarily healthy. So I think that the core root of like being aware of your own emotions and being, you know, being able to have empathy for other people and being sympathetic toward other people's feelings deals in that way of living, of like knowing yourself first and knowing how to process your own emotions, how to deal with your own emotions, and how to be kind to yourself. And if you don't have that initially, I don't think you would be able to have like that much success as far as, you know, interacting with other people. But anyway, after that long tangent, going back to the story, he started opening up to me a lot and confiding in me a lot about a lot of things. And I just felt like something bad was coming. I felt like he wanted to open up to me. I just felt like he needed somebody. He needed a friend. He needed a shoulder to lean on emotionally, you know, after everything he had been through. I don't know if he used drugs, but he drank a lot. And he would text me sometimes at like 3, 4 in the morning, you know, saying things that were just not appropriate, you know, for his employer to hear. My first mistake was to not see this as a red flag, and furthermore, just brush it under the rug and be like, you know, he's a guy, you know, in his prime, and he just is just, you know, he's just a guy. And he's just sending me this stuff, and he's drunk. He probably didn't mean it, or he probably doesn't even remember that he says that to me, or he probably thinks that, you know, that, oh, I was just drunk, like it's not a big deal. And I was like, whatever, it's not a big deal. So I brushed under the rug and played off by, you know, joking with him, being like, oh, you know, you like said, remember when you said that, and haha, funny, whatever. And we would laugh about it. And I guess that sent the message of, you know, it's okay to cross this boundary with me, because I'm not going to give you shit for it, nor am I going to put up a wall. I'm just going to, you know, laugh about it, and then we'll proceed with our business relationship, business as usual. My advice to girls all over the world is, when you feel uncomfortable with something that a guy does or says to you, don't brush it under the rug. Don't try to make excuses for him. Don't try to justify it. If you're uncomfortable, just sit with that emotion, like be uncomfortable, because that is essentially a red flag for later things that are gonna happen that could be worse. Or this person, it could be man or woman, but if you get uncomfortable with the way someone was treating you, don't laugh about it. I know that us as women, our first instinct is to, like, when we're uncomfortable, we laugh because we're uncomfortable and we don't know what to do, and we're uncomfortable with being like confrontational, or we're uncomfortable with being direct and blunt and being like, I don't like that, or that makes me uncomfortable, or whatever. We don't want things to be awkward. We don't want things to, we don't want there to be friction. And I think that as a society, women are taught to like be very docile and approachable, and we're taught to be forgiving. We're taught to be, you know, all these things that make us weak and susceptible to people who invade your boundaries or break your boundaries, or, you know, whatever. So yeah, don't let people cross your boundaries, because it's important to establish right then and there, if not later, once your emotions have passed, it's important to establish that you do have a boundary and you noticed it. And I think anybody, everybody can read body language. When you confront somebody with a action that they did that hurt you or made you uncomfortable, and you're just telling them, you're just saying like, hey, I noticed that you said this, or I noticed that you did that, they're going to be able to read your body language and know how you feel about that. And that's just the first step of putting up a boundaries. Anyway, I didn't listen to that instinct and I continued to work for him. And so he would do stuff like that, and I would just continue to let him cross my boundaries because I was getting paid and I was getting paid well, and I just, it was an easy gig for me. I've been working in customer service my whole life. So this was a transition to being like kind of not customer service. Like I have one customer. And that's like, that's not as bad as having like millions of customers all the time. So yeah, I kept letting him cross boundaries, and he made passes at me. He definitely tried to, he definitely hit on me. He definitely tried things with me. He definitely, did a lot of stuff that I was not okay with, but I stayed for the money. And later, when I quit, I had to put my foot down and I had to tell him how I felt, because I had hit a point where I had just had enough. And so my advice to women who are at any place of business, any job that you ever have, and you have a male coworker or you have a male boss who makes you feel uncomfortable, my advice to you is to really take that emotion in. I feel like we always do a really good job of suppressing our emotions and doubting ourselves and trying to justify the situation and be like, oh, maybe it was because he this or maybe because he that. And so don't do that. Like, take my advice and do not do that. Maybe something crazy won't happen to you, but your dignity gets chipped away. Every single time you let somebody cross a boundary or invade your personal space or touch you or say something to you that you don't deserve to be talked to like that, or you don't deserve to be treated that way, it chips away at your dignity, and it almost feels like it chips away at your integrity and your self-worth. And you don't have to feel that. You don't have to feel that way. You don't have to feel like you're being taken advantage of. You don't have to feel like just because you're a woman, you're less than. You don't have to feel like just because you're a woman, you don't have power. Just because you're a woman, you don't have a say. Just because you're a woman, your feelings don't matter. You don't have to feel that way. So that's just my advice. For working for a guy like that, that was a difficult part in my life, and it was really a huge learning experience for me. So I learned a lot. So I'm glad I went through it, because thankfully, thanks to God, nothing happened to me. But I learned a lot. I did date a man who was a lot older than me, significantly older than me, around that same time when I was working as a personal assistant. So when I dated this guy who was a lot older than me, I got to learn a lot of stuff about men and older men, but that was just a transition. Obviously, when you're in a relationship, that's not a job, so it's different being in a relationship with an older guy than it is to being a personal assistant to an older guy. So at that time, I was still growing up. I was still learning a lot of things about dating, about men, boys, women and men, their relationship, the balance between a man and a woman, and stuff like that. So when I dated the older guy, that was when I first started to learn about older men and men in general. And then once I kind of got a hang of that, then I was able to work for an older man and deal with him directly, because I already kind of knew and understood, and so I was able to kind of use that knowledge that I had in that relationship to cater to this business relationship. I know that that sounds like weird and controversial, but I mean, I see it logically for like the way that it is. I just see the situation for what it is, and I'm glad that I went through that experience because it really made me grow and it taught me a lot. So I just wanted to talk about that because I know that there's a lot of people, and I know that there's a lot of young girls on YouTube, and I just think that I wish that I could have had like how YouTube is now. I wish that could have been how it was back when I was a lot younger, when I was a teenager, because I would have listened to these older girls who have these experiences doing whatever, and I would have taken their advice because I never had a big sister growing up. I do have a big sister, but she wasn't in my life when I was growing up. My mom is from Mexico, and she grew up there her whole life until she was about her mid-20s. And then she came here to the States to live. So her way of growing up is completely different. I mean, two totally different countries, you know? So she's very like old school Mexican. If you have a mom who's old school Mexican, you know what I'm talking about. So I just, you know, I grew up like that, but I didn't grow up like her, if that makes sense. So no tea, no shade on my mom, but like, I love my mom, but we're totally different people, totally different. And like I said, I wish that I had a big sister growing up, you know, to tell me the ways about the world and to prepare me about things that American people go through. You know, my mom, she knew a bunch of stuff about Mexico, and she knew about a lot of stuff about Mexican culture, but she doesn't know about American culture. American culture is really different. I grew up feeling weird because I just was like, you know, traditional Mexican values, but growing up in America is kind of like sometimes contradictory. And I didn't, you know, that was hard. So that's why I made this video, because I just wanted anybody who, you know, is gonna work for a guy or like has to deal with a man who is a CEO and has a God complex, you know, I know all about it. So like, I don't want anybody to go into this feeling like they are alone and they don't know whether or not to trust their own judgment, like, because you should always trust your own judgment. So yeah. So thank you for watching. If I could help anybody, that's great. I appreciate it. For you taking the time to watch this, and yeah, that's my video.